I built the reputation, the team, the trust. He showed up and got the keys. My name's Russell Dean. I'm 52 years old, and I live in Chicago. For over 15 years, I ran Dean & Company. Restoration, the boutique vintage auto shop my old man started back in the 70s. I'd rebuilt it from the ground up, turned it from a dusty side street hobby joint into a sought-after name in high-end collector circles. That Monday, I closed a rebuild contract for a 68 Shelby GT 500. Candy apple red, custom trim. Just the kind of job that ends up in a magazine spread, the kind you frame and hang above the front desk. I was still buzzing when I walked into the office. There was a letter on my desk, formal letterhead, folded crisp and tucked into a manila envelope like it came from a bank or a lawyer. I opened it. Read it again. It named Eric Dean, my little brother, as the new managing director of Dean & Company. I laughed. Actually laughed out loud. I thought maybe one of the guys was pulling a prank. Last I heard, Eric was in Nashville trying to open a craft whiskey bar with a bunch of buddies who used to DJ part-time. Before that, it was some doomed house-flipping idea in Phoenix. Before that, a food truck. He never stuck to anything longer than 6 months. I picked up the phone and called my Uncle Joe, one of the old-timers on the company board, along with a couple of my dad's golf buddies and a family friend or two who still thought emails were fancy. Joe answered. Sounded like he was expecting my call. It's nothing personal, Rusty, he said. Just a new direction. Eric's got fresh ideas. I didn't even know what to say. They'd met without me, voted without me. My own name wasn't even mentioned in the memo. I called my dad. Straight to voicemail. No surprise there. By the end of the day, Eric had posted on LinkedIn. Excited to take the wheel at Dean & Company. Big things coming. Hashtag legacy. I stared at the screen, jaw tight. I built that reputation. I was the one who hauled this place out of the mud, one part at a time. I knew every bolt, every supplier, every client who trusted us enough to write 7-figure checks. Eric didn't know a carburetor from a coffee filter. That night, I sat in the shop's back office and looked at the files I'd kept for years. My personal folder, not on the shared drive, not on the shop computers. The blueprints, the rare parts dealer lists, the client preference notes, every handshake deal, every contact, the real skeleton key to this business. I backed it all up. Flash drive, encrypted folder. Then I stood up, looked around the office one last time, and walked out. No speeches, no slamming doors. Just me and everything that made Dean & Company worth anything. The name on the front was theirs now, but the heart of the shop, that was mine. Let's see what happens when they try to run it without me. I wasn't mourning the company. I was mourning who I'd been to them. After I walked out, I shut off my phone, tossed it into the glove compartment like it had done something wrong. Then I drove. No real plan. Just turned up the volume and let the Chicago skyline fade behind me. The next 3 days were a blur of sidewalks, empty garages, and gas station coffee. I parked near the lakefront and walked for miles, through Montrose Harbor, past the old tennis courts, down to where the skyline looked sharp and unforgiving against the gray water. I didn't talk to anyone, didn't answer messages, didn't care if anyone noticed I was gone. Nobody called, not a single congrats on the Shelby contract, not even a damn text. The silence said it all. I found myself back on the south side, driving around like a ghost, hitting every old garage I'd ever worked in. The first place I ever turned a wrench, an old tire shop off 79th, was now a bodega with fading Coke signs in the window. But I parked anyway and stood across the street, staring at the sidewall where I used to sneak cigarettes on breaks. I remembered busting my knuckles on a seized axle, oil dripping down my arms, proud like I'd survived a war. Back then, Dad would pat me on the back and say, Rusty gets it done. I hadn't heard that in years. I pulled up to a beat-up warehouse I used to rent before I joined the family shop. Back when it was just me, a couple of folding tables, and enough elbow grease to power a freight train. The garage door was still dented in the corner, right where I'd clipped it backing in a stripped '59 Cadillac. I stood there, breathing it all in. The smell of oil and old metal hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. My boots crunched over broken glass. Inside, there were still a few old tarps rolled into the corner. Ghosts of a life I'd almost forgotten. I sat down on a milk crate and just stayed. That's when it hit me. I wasn't sad about losing Dean & Company. Not really. I was sad about who I used to be to them. I was the fixer, the steady hand, the one who stayed late and didn't complain. I made my dad's shop into something respected, even loved. But I'd never been the son they bragged about. Eric was the one who got the attention. He was charming, wild, unpredictable, and I guess that's what they valued. Not the guy who kept things running, the guy who made their mistakes look good. That realization settled deep in my chest, cold and hard. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was just done. I stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans, and looked around one more time. This place, it was mine. No board, no fancy votes, no smiling knives in the back. I walked back to my truck, opened the glove box, and looked at my phone. Still no messages. That told me everything I needed to know. They thought I'd come crawling. I came ready to gut them. It started with a call from my mom. Her voice was sugar-sweet, like nothing had happened. Just a casual family dinner, she said. Nothing fancy. Eric's bringing wine. Thought it'd be nice to sit down, like old times. Old times. I almost laughed, but I played along. Told her I'd be there at 7. She seemed surprised I agreed, but I wasn't going for peace. I was going to watch the fear settle in their eyes when they realized what I'd taken with me. The house looked the same. Clean front porch. Porch light flickering slightly like it always did. Inside, the table was set like something out of a catalog. Polished silverware, linen napkins, wine breathing in expensive-looking glasses. Mom wore her usual soft pink sweater. Dad was posted in his usual spot at the head of the table, stiff as a coat rack. And there was Eric, standing in the doorway with a practiced smile like he was hosting a cooking show. "Hey, big bro," he said, like we were still kids sharing bunk beds. I brushed past him without a word. Dinner was all show. Roasted chicken, risotto, tiny sprigs of parsley like it was a restaurant. But no one touched their food. They were all waiting for me to say something. Waiting to see if I'd play nice. Maybe offer to smooth things over. I let them wait. Eric launched into some nonsense about branding. "We've got a real chance to expand into high-end European circuits," he said, swirling his wine like he knew what it meant. "Fresh look, younger audience. Dean and company is ready for the next evolution." He glanced at Dad like he was looking for backup. I didn't say a word, just kept cutting into my chicken. Then he turned to me. Obviously the Shelby project was a big win, Russ. Great work, but we're trying to modernize. Make things more scalable. That was my cue. I wiped my mouth, folded the napkin, and looked up. "You lost the Shelby buyer," I said. The room froze. "What?" Eric laughed, confused. "What do you mean? They pulled out. I got the call yesterday. You didn't answer your email, I guess. $2.1 million contract. Gone." My mom's smile cracked. Dad's fork clinked against his plate. Eric blinked at me like I'd spoken another language. "That can't be right," he said. "Why would they?" "Because I walked. I cut in. Because I was the one they trusted. Not the brand. Me." The silence was thick. Then Eric started to panic. "Well, we can recover. We've still got the Barrett-Jackson list." "Right." "Nope," I said. "They called me this morning. 2 of them are backing out. One's reevaluating. Funny thing about collectors, they don't like instability." "You're bluffing," Eric said. His voice cracked. I leaned in, resting my elbows on the table. "You don't have the files. You don't have the builds. You don't have the custom orders or the specialty vendor lists. Because I never gave them to you. You were so eager to push me out, you didn't even check what you were keeping." My mother tried to cut in, voice tight. "Honey, let's not turn this into a fight. I think what your brother means is..." "No, Mom," I said flatly. "I think what your son means is, he walked into a factory and thought it ran on branding. But it runs on grease and grit and trust. And all of that just walked out the damn door." Dad stared at his plate like it had answers. I stood up slowly, slid my chair in with care. "You wanted to run the company without me. Congratulations. Let me know how that works out." And then I dropped the napkin on my plate and walked out the door. I didn't look back. Let them chew on that. They thought they'd break me. Instead, I made them blink. I didn't even bother to sit down when I came back the next night. My mom called again. "Just a quick chat," she'd said, but I knew what it really was. They weren't worried about the family dynamic. They were worried about the business bleeding out. I showed up wearing the same jeans and boots I wore in the shop. Oil stains, dirt under my nails. I wanted to remind them exactly who had kept their precious company alive all these years. Eric opened the door like he'd rehearsed a speech. His hair was still gelled up, but the confidence was gone. "We need to talk," he said. I walked right past him. The dining table had been cleared this time. No fancy napkins. Just my dad, sitting at the head again, looking like he'd aged a decade overnight. My mom stood behind one of the chairs, hands clutched like she was bracing for a sermon. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You want to talk? Let's talk." Eric opened his mouth first, of course. "Look, I admit we underestimated things. But this kind of drama, it doesn't help." "This isn't drama," I said, flat. "It's reality. The moment I left, you started bleeding. You lost the Shelby contract. You lost the Barrett list. You lost 2 custom overseas builds. Want me to keep going?" Eric shook his head. "We can rebuild." "With what?" I said. "You don't know the suppliers. You don't know how to handle foreign part customs. You don't even know how to explain torque ratios to a guy who's been racing since '84. You're being dramatic, he snapped. That set me off. I'm being factual, I shot back. You're the one who thought a clean logo and a TikTok reel could replace 20 years of relationships. Mom tried to step in again, always the peacemaker. Russell, honey, no, I said, cutting her off. I spent years up to my elbows in engine grease, building a reputation one busted knuckle at a time. I hired the best team in the city. I handled clients who flew in on private jets. I took a rundown name and made it mean something. And you gave it to a mascot. My dad finally spoke. Quiet, but sharp. He's got new energy, Rusty. You're stuck on classics. I turned to him, looked him dead in the eye. Classics are what's selling. That shut him up. I stepped forward and put both hands on the table, slow and deliberate. If you want me back, it won't be in the background. I'm not coming in to fix things so Eric can slap his name on the work. If I return, it's on my terms. Full operational control. 40% equity. Eric moves to PR, if you still want to keep him around. Eric's mouth dropped open. You're joking. I didn't blink. Nope. That's not fair, he stammered. This is supposed to be a team. You made your team, I said. And it's losing. Mom looked at me, her voice low now. Rusty, can't we just slow this down? Find a way to fix it together. I straightened up. You had that chance. You made your call. Now I'm making mine. And then, the strangest thing happened. They didn't argue. They didn't even deny it. They just looked scared. Because deep down, they knew. The company didn't run on legacy. It ran on me. I turned to leave, pausing just long enough to say one last thing. You want a lifeline? You know where to find me. But the price just went up. Then I walked out, leaving behind nothing but silence and a line they'd never be able to walk back across. I wasn't drifting. I was drafting my comeback. After I walked out of that house, I didn't go home. I went to Belmont, a quiet diner on the corner, the kind with sticky booths, strong coffee, and zero expectations. The waitress didn't know my name and didn't care what I ordered as long as I tipped in cash. That's what I needed. No small talk, no noise, no family. Just black coffee, my laptop, and a booth near the window. I opened a fresh folder on my desktop and titled it Proof. Inside, I started building a portfolio not of work, but of worth. I pulled up every single contract I'd closed in the last 5 years. Every collector who came back again and again because they trusted me, not the brand. Every supplier deal I had brokered. Every private build I'd overseen. I documented it all. Dates, invoices, notes, emails, photos. I included client testimonials, the kind they never put on the website, like the handwritten note from the CEO who cried when I restored his late father's '57 Bel Air, or the one from the guy in Monaco who flew halfway across the world just to have me inspect his custom order. By the third cup of coffee, the folder was thick with evidence. The emails from Dean and company staff started rolling in not long after. Hey Russ, sorry to bother you. Do you remember the order form for the '74 Firebird rebuild? Can't seem to locate it. Russ, can you clarify which vendor we used for the carbon fiber fenders last winter? Russ, I think some of the client files are missing. Any idea where they'd be? I didn't reply to any of them. Not because I was being petty, because they were proof. Proof the place didn't run on Eric's vision boards or my dad's idea of new energy. It ran on me. They were scrambling, and I was just getting started. Around dusk, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Ree Walters, shop owner, smart as hell, ran a slick garage up in Milwaukee. I mentored her years ago when she was just getting started, showed her how to manage custom orders and not get pushed around by parts distributors. Rust, she said when I answered. I heard the noise. Heard what they did? Yeah, I said. Pretty brutal. There was a pause. Then she said the words that made my heart stop. We want you on our board. Name your terms. I blinked. Board? What board? I just launched a co-op, independent garages pooling resources, rare parts, high-end builds. We need someone with your reach. You've got relationships we can't buy. And frankly, I want you running it with me. For a second, I didn't say anything. I was staring out the diner window at nothing in particular, a street lamp, a couple arguing over carryout, a kid trying to skateboard uphill. Then I smiled. I didn't need Dean and company. I was the company. And now, everyone else was starting to see it too. I wasn't asking anymore. I was telling. 2 days later, I got a text from my mom. A photo, her beef empanadas, golden and greasy, stacked just how I remembered. Underneath it, one line. Dinner tonight. Just family. She knew exactly what she was doing. Those empanadas were her weapon of choice. The kind of thing she used to make on my birthday, or after Dad and I had one of our quiet Cold Wars. They were the apology without the words. The lure. I knew it was bait, but I went. Not for the food. For the message. The house smelled like it always did, cinnamon from the candles, lemon from her floors, guilt from every hallway. Eric was already there, slouched on the couch, scrolling through his phone like he had no idea the company was on fire. Mom was at the stove, pretending everything was normal. Dad, as always, was parked in the recliner, remote in hand but not watching anything. We ate in the kitchen. No fancy table this time. Just paper towels and soda cans. Mom placed the plate in front of me like it meant something. "Still your favorite," she said softly. I bit into one. Perfect, as always. But I didn't smile. When everyone had their food, I put my fork down. "If I return," I said, clear and steady, "it's as a partner. 40% equity. Eric's out of ops." The clatter of silverware stopped. Mom looked up slowly. "Russell." I kept going. "He can handle branding, events, socials, whatever fluff you want to assign him. But he doesn't touch clients, parts, or builds. That's mine." Eric opened his mouth. I didn't look at him. Mom set her empanada down. Her face didn't twist in anger. It didn't even flinch. She just stared at the table like she was doing long division in her head. "You're serious," she finally said. I nodded. "Dad." Dad cleared his throat, but I held up a hand. "This isn't a negotiation," I said. "You chose him. That's done. Now you either fix it, or you go down with the ship." Eric finally found his voice. "This is insane. You can't just—" "I can." I cut in. "I did. You had the crown. You dropped it." Mom didn't defend him. She didn't argue. She just looked tired. Real tired. Like she finally realized the cost of picking style over structure. "I'll talk to your father," she said. That was it. No fight. No tears. Just quiet defeat. Because she knew. Deep down, they all knew. This wasn't about pride anymore. It was about survival. I finished my last empanada, stood up, and grabbed a napkin. "I'll expect something in writing by Friday," I said. "No tricks. No soft offers. Real paper. Real terms." Mom nodded slowly. "Okay." I looked at Eric. He didn't meet my eyes. And for the first time in a long, long time, I walked out of that kitchen with my back straight. They finally understood. The mechanic wasn't asking anymore. He was taking the wheel. I didn't want their apology. I wanted the wheel. We met at a private showroom downtown. One of those quiet spaces with glass walls, polished floors, and $1 million Jag parked dead center under a skylight. My choice, neutral ground, but a reminder of what real work looked like, what excellence looked like. I arrived 10 minutes early, sat down at the conference table with the contract folder already open in front of me. My name was at the top. Russell Dean, partner, 40% equity, full operational control. They showed up late. Eric walked in first. Suit jacket wrinkled, face pale. He looked like a man who'd been pretending not to drown for days and finally realized no one was throwing him a rope. Mom came in behind him, calm but tight around the eyes. And Dad brought up the rear, silent and stiff like always. I didn't stand, just nodded at the 3 empty chairs. No one spoke as they sat. I slid the contract across the table. Eric reached for it first, but Mom laid a hand on his arm. "Let's hear him out," she said. So I laid it out, plain and simple. 40% equity, all classes. I handle operations, hiring, vendor deals, client relationships, and customs. Eric moves to PR and branding. No access to client files. No authority over builds. Final decisions run through me. Eric bristled. "You're stripping me of everything." "No," I said. "I'm giving you a job you can actually handle." He looked at Mom, then Dad. Neither spoke. So he slumped back in his chair. "I can't do it, Russ," he muttered. "I thought I could, but I can't. I'm not you." He looked up, and for the first time since this whole circus started, I saw it, actual humility. "I thought it'd be easy," he said quietly. "Just show up, talk big, make deals. But they don't listen to me. Not the vendors, not the crew, not the collectors. They all ask for you." I didn't respond. Just let him sit in it. Dad finally cleared his throat. "You've always been the backbone," he said, barely above a whisper. I looked at him, waited for more. But that was it. Just that one line. The closest thing to recognition I'd ever get. I didn't smile, didn't nod. I picked up a pen and tapped it against the table. "I'll draft the recovery plan tonight," I said. "We start Monday." Eric reached for the pen, but paused. "Do you hate me?" he asked suddenly. "After everything?" I stared at him, thought about it. "No," I said, "but I don't trust you." "Not yet." He nodded, slow and defeated. That, at least, was honest. Mom signed first, then Dad, then Eric. I slid the folder back into my briefcase and stood. As I reached the door, I turned just once. "This isn't me saving you," I said. "This is me saving what I built." And then I left. Quiet. Clean. By the time I hit the sidewalk, my phone buzzed, a text from one of the overseas collectors. "Just heard you're back. Let's talk next week." I pocketed the phone. No speeches. No handshakes. just the weight of the wheel finally back where it belonged, in my hands. They remembered why it worked. Because I was the one making it work. Monday morning, I pulled up to Dean & Company at 7:52 a.m., just like I used to. Same parking spot, same coffee in hand. The sign on the shop door hadn't changed, but the energy inside had. You could feel it before you even stepped through. Heads turned the second I walked in. Marcus, my lead technician, blinked like he'd seen a ghost. Jasmine, our parts coordinator, actually dropped her clipboard. A couple of the younger guys froze mid-step. I didn't say anything at first. Just walked to the center of the shop floor and clapped once. Crew meeting. Now, they gathered fast. Old faces, new ones. Some looked relieved, others nervous. I stood in front of the group, letting the silence settle in before I spoke. Here's the deal, I said. We're going back to what worked. No more fluff. No more branding strategy. We're getting back to engines, steel, and clients who care about quality. No one said a word, just wide eyes and slow nods. We're re-engaging all our top buyers. Jasmine, I'll need you to call Munich and Tokyo today. Rebuild trust. Marcus, parts inventory needs to be cross-checked by end of week. Priority goes to the classic builds, not the concept cars Eric promised and never delivered. Jasmine scribbled fast. Marcus was already walking toward the warehouse. I could see it in their faces. They weren't just following orders. They were waking up, like muscle memory kicking in. I kept going. We're putting the Shelby back on the board. I'm handling it personally. We've got 2 weeks to get that buyer back on the hook. If we don't, we eat the loss. But I plan on winning. That got a few grins. Any questions? Silence. Good. By noon, I'd already booked 3 private consults with old buyers. 2 of them hadn't returned Eric's calls in months. By 2, I had Ree's board contract in my inbox, a second path, just in case Dean & Company tried to pull anything slick again. At 3, I was under a hood, sleeves rolled up, explaining to a junior mechanic how to align the subframe on a 66 GTO without cracking the chrome trim. He listened like it was gospel. That's when I saw Eric. He stood off to the side, near the shop's glass doors. Dress shirt wrinkled, tie hanging loose. He looked like he wasn't sure if he was supposed to be there. I wiped my hands and walked over. He raised a hand awkwardly. Hey, I said back. He looked around the shop, like he didn't recognize it anymore. You being here, it changes things, he said quietly. The crew, the clients, even the smell feels different. I didn't answer right away. Just let that hang in the air. He looked back at me. You're not going to make this easy, are you? I shook my head. Nope. Eric gave a tired laugh. Fair. I met his eyes. If you're staying in PR, do the job. Events, sponsorships, smile and wave. But stay out of the work. You touch a build, you answer to me. He nodded. Got it. We stood there a second longer. Then I turned back toward the shop floor. Russ, he said before I walked off. Yeah, he hesitated. Thanks for not burying us. I didn't smile. Just looked him dead in the eye. Don't make me regret it. And I went back to work. By the end of the day, the phones were ringing. The crew was moving like clockwork. The shop felt alive again. Not because of a name. Not because of legacy. Because I was back. And they finally remembered who held the place together all along. They got their son back, but not the one they could control. 2 months later, we closed the biggest deal in Dean & Company history, a $5.4 million multi-car restoration package for a Gulf Coast collector with more money than patience. 360S, era Ferraris, 1 Aston Martin, and a Shelby Daytona that hadn't been touched since Reagan was president. Full custom restorations, all under my team. My terms. When the ink dried, I didn't celebrate. I didn't pop champagne or blast the news on socials. I just poured myself a bourbon, leaned back in my office chair, and let the silence soak in. We were back. Stronger than before. The waiting list had tripled. The phone barely stopped ringing. The buyers, the real ones, came back because they trusted the hands, not the name. The hands were mine. The shop crew worked like a machine again. Marcus had his swagger back. Jasmine ran the parts desk like a war general. Even the new kids stopped looking over their shoulders, like they were finally certain they had a leader again, not a slogan in a blazer. Eric stayed in his lane. PR, socials, event appearances. He knew better now than to overstep. Occasionally, he'd drop a suggestion, but he never pushed. Not since the day I shut down a glossy modernization pitch with 2 words. Hard pass. He learned. So did my parents. Sunday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. No guilt. No manipulation. Just Sunday dinner. Just family. 6 p.m. That was it. No pressure. No baked-in expectations. Just dinner. I stared at the screen for a minute, thought about ignoring it. But then I realized something. They weren't trying to fix me anymore, or mold me, or guilt me into showing up for a role I never agreed to. They were inviting the man I'd become. So I showed up. Same jeans, same boots. I didn't dress up. I didn't bring dessert. I brought myself, the version they'd all tried to deny, then learned they couldn't do without. We ate grilled chicken and roasted potatoes in the backyard. Dad poured iced tea and even cracked a joke about my GTO build. Mom didn't push. Eric nodded across the table like he'd been humbled the right way. They didn't say sorry, and I didn't need them to, because I had the one thing I'd chased for years and finally claimed for myself: peace. That night, after I drove home, I stood out on my porch, bourbon in hand, watching the lake reflect the city lights like slow-moving stars. I took a long breath and let the silence settle in around me. Not a silence of distance, a silence of power. No more begging, no more proving, no more chasing a seat at their table. I built my own, and it came with keys, contracts, and respect. This time, nobody could take it from me. Not again. Not ever.